successful scale up here in Spain. And then Carlos Garrida, who has a studio here in Madrid. We're helping more so the early phase get to their first MVP. So they span the nice life cycle of a startup. And what we'll be talking about today, a quick 20-minute conversation on the product design mindset at both the early phase of startups and then the scale-up phase. And then what are those inflection points and symptoms that are basically signals that you need to switch from one mindset to the other. So let's hop in. What should be the mindset at the early phase, Carlos?
Well, thanks everybody for being here, first of all. Well, the mindset is like you have to be open-minded. This is like very important at this phase because you have to be willing to learn, right? To learn processes, to learn about design, to learn about business, of course. But the mindset is that one. Open mind, forget about what you think you know, right? And start collaborating with your team, with your incubator, lab, or whatever. But the thing is that the mindset is open-minded.
Open-minded.
Yeah.
And then what should be the goals at this early phase?
Right. Carlos mentioned it already. I think it should be something around learning, right? So you want to be learning about especially your users, your problem, your clients, your customers, right? So you want to understand deeply what's moving them, what's going to make a purchase decision, to make a usage decision, and invest a lot of time in learning. So you want to optimize all your process and your way of working towards that learning and that getting that knowledge.
Sure. And I guess part of this learning process will also help you identify traps that you should look out for.
Right. So the learning process itself might lead you into traps, but it's good if you know that there are some traps, right? And well, I've fallen into quite a few in my time. So I think one of the biggest traps is to think that you need to scale way before you actually are at a stage that you have to scale, that you want to scale. And scaling early is very expensive because then you start building product, you start building processes, you start building all these things, but you might build a product that's solving a problem that's not worth solving, right? So you wanna delay that phase until you're actually really sure that you're onto something and you know what it is, how you want to solve it, how you want to attack it, how users think about it, what problem is that they're solving. So delaying the scale up phase, and then once you really know you're there, then switching the mindset.
Sure.
I think that's one piece of advice I could give.
And Carlos, I know you were saying that even at this early phase, what you are guiding some of your early phase startups on is defining design principles,
yes.
which maybe some think is something you do later on. Why do you encourage startups to think about that early on?
Yes. Well, we started the 11 Lab with principles, right? Because we believe as designers that a design principle as pillars are as the foundations that you have in your company, even as individuals, they are going to help you to guide you through those decision-making moments, right? So that's why we believe it's pretty much important, very important, to define those principles at a very early stage. Mm-hmm. Because maybe if you grow as a startup, maybe you're going to try to change a little those principles, but it's not quite right, I mean, in my opinion, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So at this early stage, we want to be open-minded, we want to learn. I have an idea of what your answers will be, but just to recap, should the mindset be experimentation and validation or building product? Which one do you believe?
Right. So I would strongly recommend that you focus on experimentation and validation.
Totally.
Right. So.
Yeah.
And then flexibility and fast iteration or scalability?
Yeah, scalability. Once you are there, then you wanna bet on scalability, but you can see how these concepts can be antagonistic in different phases, right? So that's why you really bet on something and forget about the other one. So forget about scalability in the very early stages. Just don't think about it and build things in a way that you even can throw it away, right? You don't care. Don't be afraid of that. And then once you are at the other side, then all right. In terms of product, you want to make it scalable. In terms of process, in terms like all these different layers. But it's a second thing, right? So don't be afraid, and because if you're working with tech people, right, they get trained for scalability, right? It's part of their training. They think about, I need a scalable system. My database needs to make 1 billion transactions per minute.
Always.
Yeah, and it's like you need to hit the brakes there and make them understand. At this stage, this is not what it's about, right? So we want to understand what we are solving, and then we want to understand what the user wants. And when we know it, then we go full throttle on the other side.
That's the point. The users. I mean, you have to know very well your users, right? You have to think more in the sustainability of your product than the scalability.
Sure.
Right? So this stage is this experimentation, know your users, think about how to be sustainable first, and then you can. It's organic, I think. Evolution is going to be organic.
What's your opinion on no code at this stage?
No code. Well, in my opinion, it's a very fair option. I mean, we are talking about maybe a one-person team startup, maybe 3 people. Maybe they don't have like the developer guy inside the team. So there are a lot of options in the market right now. So you have to use it. I mean, you have to have the design mindset. So it's iteration. So it's the cheapest way to iterate, to still keep knowing your user, but it's not scalable. Well, that's my opinion. So, but it's going to be like a good tool at the beginning, for sure.
So let's pivot and contrast this mindset with a scale-up, which obviously probably includes a development team. So do you want to give us a sense of what should be the mindset of the scale-up phase?
Right. Yeah. So when you figured out that okay, you actually want to scale, or you need to scale, right? Your users are asking you to because there's so many coming in, and you need to scale. You need to work on different levels, right? There's the technology scale, right? So the system has to scale if thousands and hundreds of thousands of users come in parallel. But then there's the in terms of the company building, you need to build the teams and the processes and the tools to scale, right? So there's a couple of additional layers you have to add to, and here you can see how that contrasts with the very first stage, because you start building teams and you start building processes, and like that doesn't iterate very well, right? Because that's lots of people you have to steer, right? So in the very beginning, small and quick. In this stage, you need to get some order in, right? The more people you have, the more organized you have to work with things, and that's processes, technology, that's all of the parts, and that's even design systems.
Yeah. I mean, definitely part of the building is this design system, which I think everyone has in their brain of when is it the correct time to do it, and then how do you actually get the investment in. My background is doing this in BBVA, where we built the design system there. And one obviously big challenge is getting the senior leadership team investment, because it is an upfront investment that you ultimately get back in efficiencies and consistencies. And for us, it was around data. So there's plenty of research out there. The McKinsey paper, there's an Envision one, IDEO has one. So really around data in terms of the time savings, which ultimately translates to money, and the efficiencies of using patterns, both design patterns and encoded pattern, development patterns, and then also from consistency. I mean, the customer satisfaction of your product is another really big metrics that you can use to convince the C-level for investment. But I think one of the biggest challenges when we start seeing the implementation of design systems is how do you keep the internal team motivated, because it's all about reuse, and then also how do you keep the product continually evolving and innovating? So what is your thoughts on that?
Well, in my opinion, culture it's like a big thing to implement a design system. I mean, I know you from the BBVA, and it was like a big company, right? But if we're talking about a little startup or something like that, I think the culture is it's already part of the company, right? So the thing is that we are talking about design system components, language, designers, developers, business. We are talking about maybe 3 different languages. So we have to get together and have one common goal, one common language, and that's the innovation over there.
Yeah.
I mean, you are changing the company, right? So that's
Yeah.
my knowledge over there.
No, which completely works. I mean, I think one thing that we found very successful at BBVA, and then also now how we're working with other corporations around their design systems, is changing the mindset from the design system is not a project, it's a product. So it's just another product in your portfolio of products, because with that mindset, it automatically makes people think that this is a product that's going to evolve, that I need to continually place investment and budget towards. So I think that mindset is getting the C-level to understand that this is, from the very beginning, another product is very important. And then I think also, at least something that we did at BBVA was define the threshold of reuse in every single project. So we really defined that 80% of all projects needed to reuse the design system, leaving 20% for innovation, creation of new components. It's not to say that the 80-20 is right for everyone. It was just something that we agreed on throughout the organization. But what I have seen is anywhere between like 65, 45, 70, 30 of reuse and then innovation works really well, where you still get the benefits of the design system. You can still present your metrics of the efficiencies as well as the customer satisfaction from the consistencies of the reuse of the system, but also the product keeps evolving and your internal team still feels very motivated because they get to design. So those are the 2 mindsets. So now let's give people an idea of what is the inflection moments in this cycle that are signs that you should switch from one mindset to the other. And I know you were talking about one very specific inflection point.
Right. I mean, there's one very famous point, which is product market fit, right? Which is actually notoriously hard to find, and it's notoriously hard to detect. So I think we can actually talk about things that are not signs, right? There are actually traps in there, right? So if you're counting likes on Facebook or these kind of things, right? That's not product market fit, right? That's there's lots of vanity metrics out there. Just the panel before us, they talked about a North Star metric, right? That's a very interesting thing. If you figure out what's really the one thing, and if you know your customer very well, you can take it from there. Like, what's the thing that moves the customer that can represent the business, the success of the business, right? So it's one kind of metric that suddenly goes through the roof. That's a good point. You want to have user acquisition and user retention, but both of them, you want that both of them work really well. That's a good sign, right? So pretty much what you want is that users come through your door, they run into you, and they demand business of you, right? And you have a scalability problem. That's a good thing to have, right? In the very early stages, when you're actually prepared to throw away whatever you built, because you know it's just a test, a really big test, having a scalability problem is a really good problem, right? So that means you're onto something. That means you can have product market fit, and don't fall into vanity metrics. Don't fall into other metrics that are not good at this, right?
Well, in my opinion, I mean, because I am a design process believer, I think that you have to keep testing every time. Well, that you can, of course, but testing is going to give you the feedback from the users, and maybe you detect that you need some new functionality, and your data is telling you that maybe that's the way. So that's maybe a interesting point to take, and maybe the scalability is over there. You know, like you said, it's pretty hard to do the change, but it's data users is the same. You know. some are going to get you, they're going to, yeah, to get you through some numbers, but other you are going to get to the user, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
think this.
That's a very good point, but there's a trap in there as well,
Yeah.
right? You know, there's a book that's called
There are traps everywhere.
Right, there are traps everywhere, right? But it's a book that's called The Build Trap, right? So and sometimes you have this idea, it's just one more feature away, and then I've got product market
Yeah.
fit, right? Product market fit is not about a collection of features, right? It's about solving a problem. And you might need a collection of features for that, but it's very specific. It's much less than you think. The core is, it's much smaller than you actually think. If you think about like all the companies, what they do, they in the very core, they do like a very tiny couple of things, but they do that very, very well, right? So you want to figure out, don't want to build a lot of things. That's the contrary of strategy, right? So you want to focus on something that moves the needle, something that gets people engaged, that moves the users, right? That moves the clients, that makes a difference for them. So that's what you're looking for. And it could be another feature, but sometimes another feature takes you in the wrong direction. So,
Yes.
so it is about, in my opinion, it is about thinking very precisely, like what will move the needle, what will make a difference, what's that one, what's the core behind it all, and work on that, and figure that out very, very, very well. And then you can start building on top layers and layers and layers.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Is there any other good symptoms or positive symptoms that people can look out for that might signify that they're ready?
You can ask for it, right? You will not be able to ask the people directly, right? But there's some questions that might indicate you that you are onto something there as well, right? There's one question. It's like a net promoter score style question, but it's slightly different, right? You ask your users like, how would you feel if this product tomorrow ceased to exist, right? If you just take it away. And you want to measure the 9s and 10s, the ones that say, I would be really sad, this would be terrible, right? And you want to know how many people there are, right? Those are actually your core users, right? 1 to 6, they don't care about you. They won't even, they're detractors, basically. And the rest is like, all right, I'll find something else, right? There's always something else out there, right? So you want to find those 9s and 10s, and you need like a 40% something of users that really uses you and see how they behave. And you probably want to talk especially to those users, because those are the ones that are going to love you. They're going to give you the insights of what will have an impact, right? So this is a slight trick you can use. You use this NPS style metric.
Okay. And then I think, at least in some of my experience, some of the more negative symptoms that are clear identifiers is when you're moving into new markets and you have to start from zero. So entry into new market takes a lot of time. That's definitely a signal that you need some type of design system where your reuse of patterns. I think definitely if you start seeing that you have multiple teams, both development and design, internally and externally. Right. So like the efficiencies and consistency of product build are all over the place. That's another sign that you need to start thinking about moving into more scalable systems. And then definitely one that I thought was interesting that we used quite a bit was when there's bottleneck of decision making at the high level. Because a lot of times you can use a design system to break ties, because there's really no choice. You have to follow the design system. So a lot of times we use that as sort of like our little hidden trick to keep products moving when there was a bottleneck at the high level. So we're almost out of time. Is there any last minute thoughts or insights that you wanted to provide the audience?
Not from my side.
Well, we'll be outside if there's any other questions. Thanks for joining, and thank you too for coming and talking.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
All right.